Joining us now, Professor of Economics and Public Policy at the University of Michigan, Justin Wolfers, writer at large and host of the Bulwark podcast, and MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, and national affairs correspondent at The Nation, John Nichols. First off, I'm very happy that I bought my knee-high leather boots last December. I got that out of the way. Justin, I thought we were headed towards some semblance of stability. It looked that way, at least. The China tariffs were coming down to 30%. There was a deal made with the UK. Donald Trump talked about how he was optimistic about a deal with the EU. He was exempting electronics like the iPhone. By the way, he clarified today in the Oval Office that it's not just the iPhone. It'll be any company, Samsung, whatever, making that sort of product. They've got to make it here in the United States. And yet today, you know, it's all up in the air again, and we've seen the markets react.
Katie, I've been working on a theory. It's this. Maybe men are too emotional to run trade policy. Maybe we simply lack the hormonal steadiness to look ahead.
Maybe you need a pair of knee-high leather boots.
Katie, this could go all sorts of places, but I'm going to keep us on economics. Wow. Okay. It is true that there's an approach to economic policy making where what you do is you think, what is it I want to do? Where do I want to be in the future? And you implement that. You announce a policy, it's done, it's all over. There's no soap opera, no telenovela. You have your nerds crunch some numbers, you announce them, the world knows what it's doing, and then the world can turn its attention to doing business. That's not what this White House is doing. And at the moment, no trade policy that this president has announced has a lifespan longer than a cicada. And as a result, it's very hard to do business with cicadas. It's also very hard to do business with the rest of the world if you don't know the terms on which you're doing it. So there's two things going on here. It's important to keep your eye on both of them. One, there's a genuine tariff shock. He's shutting us off from the rest of the world. A 50% tariff on the EU would effectively be an embargo. You're going to walk into a liquor store, there'll be no French wines, no Spanish wines. You're going to walk into your restaurateur is going to tell you that they're running out of money because restaurants make most of their money from the markup on those fancy foreign wines. So that's what's coming right at us right now. And the second thing is this uncertainty shock, that no one can sit down and do business because no one knows what this highly hormonal president is going to do tomorrow or next week.
John, it's not just people manufacturing boots, shoe companies, small businesses like that. It's craft beer makers. It is people who manufacture only in the United States. They're having issues with prices because labor is more expensive here. And so they've got to convince the American public that their product is worth it, is 5 times, 10 times higher than a product that is made at least partially overseas. It's not so easy to change the system that we have been living in for the past 4 decades. And yet Donald Trump seems to think it's easy. And a lot of voters who elected him thought it was easy. I wonder, are you hearing yet any uneasiness with the way things are going so far?
Massive uneasiness. I remember I spent a lot of my time. I live in Wisconsin. Spent a lot of my time in rural areas. My family's from rural Wisconsin. The town I grew up in when I was born had 970 people. Most of the folks were farmers, or they were in businesses that related to farming. And even now, as we've so reduced our number of farmers in the U.S., farmers are still the largest block of any kind of individual small business. I mean, if you're talking about people who do a particular thing at a small business level or a mid-level business, and they're in a real crisis situation right now because they don't know who they can send goods to. They've got their seeds in the field, but they don't know, where they're going to be able to send things. They don't know where they're going to be able to sell stuff. They don't know when they might be blocked in short order with a new tariff or something else. And what we're seeing is polling right now, and over the last few months actually, that has showed that farmers who voted for Trump are opposed to the way he is approaching tariffs. They're very, very uncomfortable. You can play that out in the small business community. You can also play that out in much bigger businesses, in manufacturing, because the fact of the matter is that people who work in manufacturing plants auto plants and plants that produce other things, they're very aware of these issues. They may vote for someone who promises them a better deal. That's not uncommon, and it's not shocking. But then they watch how that deal plays out, and I can tell you without a doubt, having been in Kenosha, Wisconsin, and Belmont, Wisconsin, and over the border in Illinois and in Iowa and other places, every place I go, I hear a discussion of tariffs at the level that I have never, ever heard it before. And it is something that frankly has people nervous, anxious, and politically kind of rethinking a lot of their choices.
Yeah, Donald Trump's ubiquity forces people who even don't pay attention to start considering these things because he is everywhere at every moment. So there's a contradiction here and a political one that I think is important to point out, Tim. You have consumer sentiment down because there are fears that a recession could be coming or fears that prices are being hiked. Okay, so consumers are not spending as much. They want to save that money because they're worried about the future, maybe worried about whether they're going to have a job. Say the worst comes to pass. Say there is a recession. Well, don't worry. The GOP in their new big, beautiful bill has cut a lot of the safety net that would catch you in the off chance or the chance that you end up losing your job. 8.6 million people, would lose health care coverage in this new House-passed budget plan if it makes it through the Senate and then it gets signed by the president. $290 billion cut from SNAP, from food stamps. So not only are they, is Donald Trump rocking the economy, rocking the markets, driving down consumer sentiment, making big banks and forecasters worry about a recession, but the Republican Party under Donald Trump and directed by Donald Trump is now cutting the social safety net to catch everybody in case the worst does come to pass in order for Donald Trump to get to some, euphoric future that he promises it's coming up around the corner. Don't worry. I don't understand that political contradiction. I don't understand how that wins you elections.
Well, I think it's going to be a big challenge for them. There's another element to this little clusterfly, Katie, that you didn't even mention, which is the interest rate side of it, right? Because this is also a huge debt bomb of what's happening on the Hill. So you see the 10-year interest rate in the bond market going up over the past week. And so, in addition to the cuts to the working poor that you laid out, if you're a middle-class family, if you're a senior, you're trying to either upgrade or downsize your house, get a new car, right? Like all of that is your student loans, like all of that is costing more because the interest rates are going higher because of just the total irresponsibility with the debt and deficit. I think that to explain the political situation, why they're jamming this stuff through, is what you've got is Donald Trump is addicted to tariffs. He thinks it's a pretty word. He likes the fact that it gives him power. As you mentioned earlier, he likes attention. He likes the fact that today, when maybe he would have been out of the news, maybe something else is in the news, he can fire off a bleat this morning, attacking our allies in Europe and saying your IKEA furniture is going to cost 50% more, and people are talking about him again. So Trump is committed to the tariff side of the equation. And then you have the Republicans on the Hill, your more traditional Republicans. John Thune in the Senate said today they want to jam through these tax cuts. They have an ideological project in favor of cutting taxes and cutting the social safety net. And so you have these two priorities simultaneously, and both sides are just saying full speed ahead. And each of them have their problems in a vacuum, but together it's creating kind of that economic whirlwind that you laid out that I think is going to be particularly problematic and separate from what we saw in Trump 1.0 or during the Bush years, when they were doing kind of the tax cuts and spending cuts side of things without doing the tariff uncertainty and without the high interest rates.
Yeah, and Josh Hawley made this point that, listen, the Republican Party is now the party of the working class. What are you doing cutting benefits for the working class, safety nets for the working class, and then transferring money to the very rich? The upward transfer of the cash doesn't make political sense. Justin, Tim mentioned the bond market. It's obviously shuddering. The yield is having a problem. And part of that is because, and I think part of why that's so worrisome right now, and you're an expert in this, so you tell me if I'm wrong, but there was an argument for a long time that the deficit didn't matter. You could keep adding to it. Everyone's going to want to buy our debt. Don't worry about it. People trust the United States. We've got a gold rating. We don't have a gold rating any longer. We don't have a sterling rating from the places like Moody's. We now are in a position where our debt is not as sellable. It's not as desirable from other countries. So how does that make this moment even more precarious, where Donald Trump is adding to the debt, the Republicans are adding to the debt, but also at the same time making our debt less palatable?
Yeah, so there's something technical but very interesting going on right now, which is you're absolutely right to say that bond yields, which is to say the interest rates that governments borrow at, are going up. If they go up while the stock market's going up, often that's because we've got a strong economy. What's happening now is bond yields are going up, but the stock market's going down. What that is what people are colloquially calling the sell America trade, which is basically, it used to be that when you wanted to park your money somewhere safe, you'd park it in the United States. That was a statement not just about our strong economy, but also about our robust political institutions. We never thought we were one election away from a revolution or an autocrat or firing the chair of the Federal Reserve or walking back from research and development or tearing up international treaties. But all of a sudden, we now feel every day like some of those things could happen the next day. That makes us a much less desirable investment location. That's what jacks up the interest rates. And that in turn is not only, as Tim appropriately said, going to make it a lot harder for mums and dads to get their next mortgage. It also means that, remember, the US government owes a lot of money. The interest rate we're getting charged on that's going up. Even just half a percentage point on trillions of dollars adds up to a whole heck of a lot of money, which means there'll be less left over for the government to do what we want it to do.